Good evening, everyone. I think we're ready to begin. So, my name's Tom Bushatsky. I'm the director of the Arizona Department of Water Resources. Welcome to the first meeting of the Northwest Basin Planning Area, part of Governor Doug Ducey's Arizona Water Initiative. I want to thank Chairman Bishop and the Board of Supervisors for allowing us to use this venue. It's a fantastic venue. I'm really excited to see all the folks in the audience and that there's so much participation and so much interest from the community. It does not surprise me, however, that there is such interest. So today's meeting is the first of many to come. Again, these meetings are part of Governor Ducey's Water Initiative, which is designed to help ensure that there's certainty and vitality for Arizona's water supplies for all of Arizona for the future. A key component of today's meeting and the first step in this process is for me to hear from all of you regarding your concerns on water resource issues and water issues in this area. It's the most important part of the meeting to me. Ultimately, the goal of this process is to work with all of you to create solutions that will help this area meet its future water demands. When we get to the public comment part of the agenda, we want to make sure that every person who wishes to speak today has an opportunity to be heard. And so that we don't miss anyone's remarks, we are going to be recording today's proceedings. And in that light, I want to make sure that I understand that discussions of water issues in Arizona can be passionate, and I ensure to you that I share that passion. And I know that we will all respectively express our views passionately but respectfully so that all of us can both hear and listen to each other's comments when that time comes, and for our recording system to accurately capture the dialogue. I also want to mention that this meeting is being broadcast live on Mojave County's YouTube channel. Another reason for the recording system, for the microphones, and the attempt to make sure those folks can hear us as well. So at this point in time, I want to acknowledge a few elected officials that we have in the audience, and in no particular order. I'll start with Holly Irwin from the La Paz County Board of Supervisors. We have Mark Clark, a Bullhead City Council member. We have Stuart Yoakum from the Kingman City Council. Filbert Wadahaji, I hope I got that right, from the Wallapai Tribe. And Chairman Gene Bishop from the Mojave County Board of Supervisors. There will be an opportunity for the elected officials to speak in the public comment period if they want, but if any of the elected officials would like to make a quick introductory remark at this point in time. Seeing none, we'll wait. Oh, Chairman Bishop? It must be strange for you to be approaching that side of the podium talking to me.
Actually, I prefer this side. It's more comfortable. I just wanted to welcome you for coming to Mojave County, and I look forward to all of the public participation. I want to hear what you folks have to say and what our constituents have to say, and I hope we can come to some kind of a plan that will help Mojave County and save our water. So thank you very, very much for coming.
Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, during this meeting, folks will have an opportunity to engage with the department regarding your concerns. That can be done in two ways. If you would like to make a verbal comment during the public comment period, please fill out a speaker's card. They were available in the back as you came in. But if you haven't gotten one and you would like to get one, you can raise your hand and one of the department staff members will come and bring you a card. It's important that we have the cards filled out. We need to assess the number of people that would like to speak. so that we can make sure we have time for everyone to do so. Depending on the number of people that might want to speak, we will have to adjust the amount of time each individual has accordingly, again, to give everyone an opportunity to speak. We intend to call on individuals in the order in which we receive their speaker's card. If you would rather not comment during the public comment period verbally, but would like to submit your comments in writing to the department, we have feedback forms for you to do that. And again, if you need one, raise your hand. A staff member will provide you with one. Some of you may have already received some of those forms, again, as you signed in today. The department has created an online portal where you can provide feedback via our website as well. And we will provide details regarding the online portal address, et cetera, later on in the agenda. I'm going to turn this meeting over now to one of my staff members, Jerry Walker. Jerry is the Deputy Assistant Director for the Water Planning Division and is leading the entire water initiative process. She will give you some more information explaining what the planning area process and the water initiative is all about. And I think she has a PowerPoint presentation that she will do right now. So thanks, Jerry.
Thank you. I'm actually going to have to move up there because I have no means of advancing the slides. So excuse me for just 1 second. Sorry about that. So the first item on the agenda is I'm going to give you a description and some information about the planning area process. As Tom mentioned, the planning area process is one of the 2 parts of the Governor's Arizona Water Initiative that was created by executive order in December of last year. And I'm going to do that. Then we are going to follow that discussion with a hydrology presentation where we're going to talk about some data. And then, as Tom had said, I did want to follow up with just kind of the last purpose of the meeting is the opportunity for us to receive input from the stakeholders. So if we're talking about the planning area process, what is a planning area? The planning area concept is a relatively new way of looking at the state from a water perspective, and it came out of kind of 2 earlier processes that took place in the state. The first was meetings of a group that was statutorily created called the Water Resources Development Commission, and they looked at demand and supplies statewide, but they looked at it from a county perspective and from a groundwater basin perspective. And they were looking at projections out to 2010, 2035, and 2060 was what their statutory mandate was. And following their report in January of 2014, DWR released what's called the statewide strategic vision. And on my first slide, that was the cover of the strategic vision. And that was the first time that the data that was compiled in the WRDC process was kind of reconfigured into this concept of planning areas. So typically we look at water in Arizona from a groundwater basin perspective or from a surface watershed, and obviously in the WRDC also from a county perspective. And the planning area divided the state into solution-oriented planning areas. So they were areas of similarity. They might have similar water use, they might have similar water supplies, or some other similar characteristic, but the concept and the idea was that any solutions for a planning area would be kind of a regional solution. So what's common to the Northwest Basins Planning Area is where all of the groundwater basins in the planning area within the basin and range physiographic province, and a significant reliance on groundwater. So the Northwest Basins Planning Area is composed of the Detrital Valley, the Wallapai Valley, Meadview Basin, and Sacramento Valley groundwater basins. And when Frank does his presentation, he'll call out some specifics associated with each one of those basins. So I said before, the Governor's Water Initiative, the announcement was made on October 5th. We're moving forward in a 2-track process, and we're continuing the work that was published in the strategic vision. The other track, other than the planning area process, is the Governor's Water Augmentation Council, and that is a council that was created by the governor with, right now, 29 appointed members appointed by the governor, and they are going to start having discussions regarding augmentation opportunities, reuse and reclaimed water, additional conservation opportunities, and just having those discussions about the bigger long-term strategies for addressing any of our demand and supply imbalances. So what the stakeholder process will do is, the goal was to first look at all of the 22 planning areas identified in the vision, and they have been somewhat prioritized in this first year. There are 3 that are taking place right now. The goal is to work closely with stakeholders in the planning areas to do 2 things. First of all, to have discussions about the water supply and demand components, and then identify strategies to meet future water demands. So we're looking at refining the information that we have. Some of it is somewhat dated. Some of it is based on the work that was done by the WRDC, and that was based on 2005 baseline data for municipal demand, agricultural demand, industrial demand sectors. And then have conversations with you about possible strategies to develop a solution set to help address any demand and supply imbalances. And the goal is, once we go into a planning area, our goal is to complete in 1 year. And as Tom mentioned, there will be multiple meetings over the course of the year, driven largely by the input that we get here, and also us working with you to help develop those better demand numbers. So this is a slide that shows what data we had currently coming out of the WRDC process in the statewide strategic vision. And I don't have a pointer. So the one thing, though, that I want to call your attention to is the title of this is Past Water Demand Projections, because we know that these really are no longer valid because there have been changes in this area. Most notably, if you look at the agricultural water use sector, based on 2005 data, in 2010 they projected 0 agricultural use in this planning area, and that projected out to 2035 and 2060. And obviously we know that that's not the case anymore. So what are the next steps in the planning area process? As I said, we'll have additional stakeholder meetings and discussions that will be scheduled by DWR here within the planning area. ADWR's field services basic data people will continue making well measurements, and a lot of the information that we have is the information that Frank's going to present to you. We are also potentially expanding the index well line. There's sometimes some difficulty doing that, getting individuals either willing to allow us to utilize their wells as index wells. And also, if it's a telemetry site, typically that well can't be used for water pumping purposes if it's being measured. So, but that is something that we're working towards, is expanding our well index line within the basin. We have also, DWR participates with the USGS in a effort that's associated with their annual collection of water use data in the state. And so one of the things that we've done is we have entered into additional work items with them to include field verification of the actual crops that are being grown within the basins in the planning areas, and that's some of the information that Frank will present as well. And I did just want to call out that Tom mentioned that the ADWR portal is available for stakeholders to provide information. John Riggins is the person who will be the lead for this area. You can either submit information through the the email that's listed here on the slide, or you can also email John directly to submit any comments, additional information, or anything associated with the process. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. So I noticed after the meeting started that State Representative Sonny Borelli has joined us. Thank you, Representative Borelli. Hopefully I haven't missed any other elected officials. So we'll move on now.
Oh.
Mayor Kingman, thank you. Yes. Kingman, thank you. So next we're going to have Frank Corkill, DWR's chief hydrologist, give us an overview of the hydrologic and water use information and data that we have for this area. As he's presenting this information, I would like you to keep in mind that water users in this area of the state are not required by state law to meter or report their water use information to the department, unlike some of the other areas of the state. So the data that we have in our possession is limited. Part of this planning area process is to create tools and opportunities to collect some of that water use data, perhaps voluntarily, which we know will be essential to identifying the issues here and to possibly finding some solutions that we can use to make this area more sustainable and more resilient for the future. So with that, Frank, you can take it away.
Thank you, Tom. I have to stand up here because I need to point, and I apologize if I turn my back to anybody. So, my presentation today is on just some of the basic hydrology of the area and also the water use information that we have. This first slide shows the planning area. As Jerry mentioned, it's composed of 4 groundwater basins. Southwest, the Sacramento Valley Basin; to the northwest, Detrital Valley, Wallapai Valley, and then Meadview up here. The major communities, of course, Kingman. Kingman is mainly in the Wallapai Valley, but there is a little bit of Kingman over here in Sacramento as well. Golden Valley, Franconia down here in the southern part of the Sacramento Valley, Dolan Springs and White Hills in this area, and Via Vista and Hackberry over here in the eastern Wallapai. A little bit about the surface water flow in the system. In the Sacramento Valley, it's drained by Sacramento Wash that flows from north to south. When it gets down here below the Black Mountains, the flow is almost due west to the Colorado River. There's a surface water divide between the Sacramento Valley and Detrital Valley at this location. Surface flow in the Detrital Valley is from south to north into the Lake Mead area. In the Wallapai Valley, the main drainage in the southern part of the valley is Truxton Wash, which comes through this gap here near Hackberry. It flows to the northwest where it drains into Red Lake, which is a dry playa lake normally. North of Red Lake, Wallapai Wash drains the northern part of the Wallapai Valley. There's a segment of Wallapai Wash that drains to the south towards Red Lake, but north of a surface water divide in this area, the flow is towards the Colorado River and Lake Mead. This map shows land ownership in the area. The green land area is private land. It's checkerboarded with a lot of BLM land. There's some state trust land, national park, and a few other land types, but this is the general land ownership. A little bit about the characteristics of the groundwater basins. The Sacramento Valley is just under 1,600 square miles, Wallapai just over 1,200 square miles, Detrital just under 900, and Meadview just under 200 square miles. The USGS, in some of its recent studies, has estimated groundwater storage down to 400 meters below land surface. That's roughly 1,300 feet. For Detrital Valley, the estimate is of 7.9 million acre feet. For Sacramento Valley, 28 million acre feet, 11.4 for Wallapai, and less than 1 million for Meadview. Natural recharge along mountain fronts and ephemeral streams has been estimated by the USGS to be less than 1,500 acre feet per year for Detrital, about 6,000 for Sacramento, 5,400 for Wallapai, and we have no estimate for Meadview, but it's certainly small. As Jerry mentioned, the USGS provides information on groundwater pumping in the area. For 2014, which is the last year we have total information for all the different categories of pumping. For Detrital and Meadview, the estimate was less than 300 acre feet a year for both of those basins. For Sacramento Valley, 9,700 acre feet, and for Wallapai, 16,600. I'll have more information a little later in the presentation on how that breaks out by category. This is a map that shows depth to bedrock in the basin. This is essentially how estimates of groundwater storage and just how the understanding of the geology of the basins is. The areas near the mountain fronts have essentially very shallow depths to bedrock, but out in the basin centers, and for example, this is the Dutch Flat area, the Sacramento Valley, the estimated depth to bedrock is in excess of 2,600 meters, 8,000 feet. Further north in the Golden Valley area, the estimate is about 1,300 meters, or roughly 4,000 feet below land surface is the bottom of the aquifer system. In the southern Detrital Valley, about 1,500 meters. Over in the Kingman area, this is the small basin where the Kingman well field is located. The depth of bedrock is estimated at about 1,200 feet, or roughly, 1,200 meters, or about 3,900 feet. Very deep basin, southeast of Red Lake, with estimated depths to bedrock of over 4,300 meters. This is a map that shows pre-development groundwater conditions in the area. These lines, these contours are lines of equal groundwater elevation back in a time when there wasn't any groundwater pumping in the area, so it's an undisturbed system. As you can see, and groundwater flows at right angles to these contours, so the flow in this area is very similar to the surface flow. This is the Sacramento Valley flow down the axis of the valley. South of the Black Mountains here flow almost due west towards the Colorado River. In the Detrital Valley, flow from south to north up to the Colorado River Lake Mead area. And then in the Wallapai, from south to north through the Red Lake area up towards the Colorado River in that area. Just a little bit about major groundwater uses in the area. Of course, municipal use for the major communities, Kingman, Golden Valley, and many of the smaller area towns in the area. Electric power generation for Griffith Power Plant in the Sacramento Valley Basin. Mining, the Mineral Park Mine in the very northeastern part of the Sacramento Valley. And then, of course, more recently, irrigation for farming in the Red Lake area to the west and southwest of Red Lake. That's this area here. In the Stockton Hill area, and then also in the Long Mountain area. And then a little bit south of Golden Valley in this area, just a little bit to the west of I-40. This is a map that shows the USGS estimated cropped and cleared agricultural areas in the Northwest planning areas. This is that area around Red Lake. In 2014, the GS had, interpreting satellite data and other information, had estimated about 1,700 cropped acres in 2014, with about an additional 800 acres cleared. In the Stockton Hill area, there was almost 3,500 acres cleared, but only about 600 cropped in 2014. In the Golden Valley area, about 100 acres cleared, cropped, and almost 300 acres cleared. The situation had changed a lot by 2015. This is a map that shows the most recent information from the GS for 2015. This is combined cropped acreage, about 5,800 acres in the Wallapai Valley by 2015, with almost 23,000 acre-feet of groundwater pumping for that area. And of course, it includes the Red Lake area and Stockton Hill and this area near Long Mountain. And in the Golden Valley area, this area was almost 400 cropped acres with almost 2,000 acre-feet of pumping. Well, to provide all that pumping, of course, it requires a lot of wells. This is a list that just shows how many wells the department has permitted over the last 20, 30 years. For Detrital Valley, about 400 registered wells in Detrital, about 1,700 in Wallapai, less than 100 in Meadview, and about 2,200 in the Sacramento Valley. This is the location where those wells are. The blue dots are wells that are referred to as exempt wells, wells that by definition can pump no more than 35 gallons a minute, typically a lot less than that usually. These are wells that are used for domestic purposes and for stock for the most part. The red wells are non-exempt wells, wells that can pump greater than 35 gallons a minute, typically up into the hundreds of gallons in many cases for municipal or agricultural purposes. Quite a concentration of non-exempt wells in the northern part of the Sacramento Valley area around Golden Valley. Then this is the area where the Kingman well field is, showing both industrial and municipal wells there. The the non-exempt wells near Long Mountain, pardon me, and also near Stockton Hill Road, and then up here near Red Lake. This is the last year we had totals, complete totals for all the different water use categories, 2014. For 2014, the USGS estimated a total of about 16.6 or 16,600 acre-feet of pumping for the Wallapai Valley, with about 8,000 going to agriculture and 8,300 to municipal uses. For the Sacramento Valley, very small water use in 2014 for agriculture, but about 2,000 for municipal purposes. The Mineral Park Mine using about a little over 5,000 acre-feet per year that year, and about 2.2 or 2,200 acre-feet for the Griffith Power Plant. Again, Detrital and Meadview have very small uses. little bit about current groundwater conditions in the area. This is a chart that just, or a table that just shows how many wells we measure each year. Jerry mentioned that we have an index line, wells that we try to measure each year. And every several years, we also try to do what are called well sweeps, where we measure as many wells as possible. The last well sweep we did was in 2006 for this area. We hope to do another sweep in 2017. That's our plan, and it provides a lot of information on water level change that I'll be showing you next. This is a map that's just for the index wells that we measured in 2006 and 15 that show the changes in groundwater level in the wells. The blue dots are wells that had rising water levels. The red dots are wells that had declining water levels. I know you probably can't read the numbers, but we've compiled basin-wide averages. For the detrital basin, the average of all the wells that we had measurements for in both those years was about a little less than 4 feet of decline over that 10-year period. For Sacramento Valley, about 2 feet of decline for all the average for all the wells. Wallapai, less than half a foot of decline, and Meadview, 7 feet of decline. Of course, these are basin-wide averages, and they don't really reflect local conditions in many cases, and so I'll be showing you some hydrographs in just a moment that give you more information about local groundwater changes. This is from a USGS report just showing the groundwater flow patterns. These are lines equal groundwater elevation, again showing groundwater flow in the Sacramento Valley pretty much unchanged in terms of general direction from north to south and then due west towards the Colorado River. Very little change in the detrital valley from those pre-development contours I showed you earlier, with flow down the axis of the valley from south to north into the Lake Mead area. A little bit of a change noted in the Wallapai Valley in the Kingman area. This is the area where the Kingman well field and other industrial wells are located. In this area, if you remember, the pre-development flow was essentially from south to north up through Red Lake and towards the Colorado River. Today there's a Kona Depression developed in the Kingman municipal area, and so there is groundwater flow from the regional aquifer towards the Kingman well field, but there's a groundwater divide about in this location, and flow also flows through the Long Mountain area, this bedrock narrows, and also coming in along Truxton Wash, flowing north through Red Lake area back to the Colorado River. So there is a little bit of a difference that we see in the more recent water level data around Kingman. A few of the hydrographs of specific well changes. I need to be able to tell you, and I know you can't read. I know it's hard to read these hydrographs. I want to make sure I tell you the time that they begin. So bear with me just a moment. This is a well that's in the very southern part of the Sacramento Valley, and it's hydrographed. So this is how the water level changed, and each one of these circles represents a specific water level measurement that's been taken at this well, and the hydrographs begin in the late 1970s, and it shows just a very small change in this well. It's an unused stock well of about 2 feet over that period of time. That's a rise, excuse me. So the blue arrow here represents the direction of flow from the earliest measurement, or excuse me, direction of water level change. And can you see that? Yeah. So this is a well near Franconia that essentially shows no change. These intervals on this chart are 2 feet, so there was a time when it had dropped by about 2 feet in recent years, but and that well this time was 1980, so there was very little overall change since 1980 in water levels in this particular well. Further north in the Sacramento Valley, this is an industrial well that was first measured in the mid-1960s, and it didn't show a whole lot of change. It provides water to the Mineral Park mine, and it didn't show a whole lot of change until the last 5-7 years, and then a drop of about, overall a drop of 33 feet, but about 23 feet in the last several years. Near Golden Valley, this is an unused municipal well that's shown a 4.5-foot decline over the last, since the mid-2000s. In the Detrital Valley, this is an unused stock well. Actually, it may be a used stock well, but it's since just over the last 5 years or so, it's shown about 10 feet of rise. I don't really have an explanation for that other than if the well's not being used or there may be some local recharge. It is up in the foothill area, the Black Mountains. Here's a well showing only about a 1.5 foot of water level rise in the central part of the Detrital Valley. This is a well that we have pressure transducer equipment installed. That's what this is here. So, and it also has radio telemetry, so it's a well that we get real-time data. All this water level data, by the way, we put into a database. It's what we call our groundwater site inventory database, and it's available to people on our website, and they can select wells and create these hydrographs themselves. And so it's a very useful tool to get an idea what water levels are doing in your particular area. Here's a well located up in the very northern part of Detrital, showing almost no change over the period of record. And just to make sure I tell you correctly, sorry, not used to doing it quite this way. That well, first measurement was in the mid-1980s. In the Wallapai Valley, in a well located about 6 miles east of Kingman, this is an unused stock well showing 21 feet of decline since the mid-1960s. This is an unused City of Kingman well equipped with radio telemetry and pressure transducer equipment showing almost 80 feet of decline since the mid-1960s. This is a well along Truxton Wash where we also have automated equipment installed with radio telemetry. It's a fairly significant decline in earlier years, but in more recent times, since about the mid to early 2000s, significant rise. I assume that's because these wells were not used after that point, but more recently 10 feet of decline in the last few years. A little to the southeast of Red Lake, a well that showed about 2 feet of rise since the mid-1980s. Now this is a well that's located right in the agricultural area, just south of it actually, the Red Lake area, and it's showed pretty stable conditions going back to the, I believe that's the late 1950s, but in recent years, since 2010, about 9 feet of decline in that particular well. North of Red Lake, and well, we have transducer equipment installed, very stable water levels since 2007. Finally, in Midview, we have a well that shows over 40 feet of decline since the early 1980s. And a windmill in the Meadview area showing about 4 feet of rise. Make sure I got this right. Since the mid-1970s. A little bit on water quality in the area. The Arizona Department of Water Quality has done ambient water quality surveys for all the basins. I'm not going to go into detail on what all the dots represent as far as water sampling data, other than just wanted to let everybody know that this information's available. I'm going to give you a location on their website where you can download these reports if you see areas where you'd like to have more information. So, of course, there's information for Untitled, Sacramento, Wallapai, and Meadview. These are some reports that are available from DWR's website. These are on some of the gravity surveys we did in the last 5 to 10 years. These are some earlier hydrologic reports of the basins, and this is a groundwater monitoring report, statewide report that has information on water level changes statewide and also in this area. These are the DEQ water quality reports. You can download the PDF copies of those reports at this location. And finally, a lot of the USGS studies that I mentioned earlier in their presentation can be downloaded from the USGS website at this location. We'll be putting this presentation on our website, and so you'll be able to download it probably within the next few days. And if you have any further questions, please contact our Public Information Officer, Michelle Moreno, or me at these email addresses. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Frank. And I recognize, sitting here watching this presentation, that was a heck of a lot of information, a lot of details, a lot of maps. Again, this is the first of many meetings, and we just intended to give folks a brief overview of what we know so far. And again, the department is certainly ready, willing, and able to help any of you out there better understand this information. We just don't have the time to do that tonight, but if you wanted to contact the department again through Michelle, perhaps, we can help you all go through this stuff in more detail. So we want to move on to the next presentation, and that presentation is about the water management tools that are currently available under state law. And again, this will also be more of an overview. There's a lot of details to these different tools, but we'll give you that overview. We'll get into that in more detail in subsequent meetings as well. And again, part of what we're looking for here in this process is what tools might be appropriate for this area, what new tools might be available if we can achieve consensus on what those tools are and how to get them put into either policy or perhaps law. So I'll turn it back over to Jerry Walker for this presentation.
Thank you. So I'm now going to give a brief presentation on the existing groundwater management tools. As Tom said, there's a lot of information in these, and this may be a repeat for some people sitting in this room. I know a couple years ago we came up and had some discussions about things associated with existing groundwater management tools. So this might not be as great of depth as that, but it's just a quick overview, and we will have plenty of time through this process to have additional discussion about it. So the Groundwater Management Act of 1980 is kind of the basis for everything. It's the act that created the Department of Water Resources. And so if you note, a lot of Frank's things began after 1980, whenever our agency was created. And the goals of the Groundwater Management Act were primarily to deal with severe groundwater depletion in the most populous areas of the state. And allow us to allocate those groundwater resources to most effectively meet needs, and largely also to preserve groundwater for use in drought. And that's one of the things within the active management areas that we've been very successful at. There are some general statewide provisions that apply as well. So within the state, with regard to a well, any new well that's drilled must file a notice of intent to drill that well with the department. And the wells must be drilled by a licensed well driller, a well driller that's licensed in the state of Arizona. And there is a requirement to maintain the registration of the wells. So if ownership changes, that sort of thing, individuals report that to DWR, and we maintain that registry of existing wells. Also on a statewide basis, there are, in general, the prohibition of transportation of groundwater. However, there are some exceptions and some exemptions. There are also adequate water supply requirements. Outside of an active management area, adequate water supply, and this is related to development of subdivisions, so it's based on the real estate, Department of Real Estate's definition of a subdivision, which is in general 6 or more lots. You can develop with an inadequate determination, but it is a public records bit of legislation, and so to the first owner or the first buyer of that land, it has to be disclosed that there is an inadequate water supply. But development can continue under an inadequate determination. We also have rules, regulations, and programs associated with underground storage and recovery. And one of the more recent things, and it's only been in the books for less than 10 years, is the requirement for community water systems to develop plans, system water plans that include drought and conservation plans, and also do annual reporting to the Department of Water Resources. And in this planning area, there's about 16 community water systems that report to DWR. So the next step up from just general statewide regulations regarding groundwater management is the irrigation non-expansion area. So within an INA, the statewide provisions apply, but there are some additional restrictions. The most obvious one, being its name, is that no new irrigation can take place other than the irrigation that was in place when the INA was created. There are some limitations on commercial and industrial pumping, and there is some monitoring and reporting to ADWR required within INAs. And then the highest level of regulation, groundwater regulation and management in the state, is within the state's active management areas. And you'll see we have the statewide provisions apply. We also have the 3 provisions associated with the INAs, most notably, again, no new irrigation. And then there are additional things. There's management goals, management plans. There's mandatory conservation requirements in many of the existing AMAs. There are it's required to have an authority to withdraw water. So if you don't have an irrigated grandfather right, you have to have some other authority, if it's a general withdrawal authority or if it's a municipal authority to withdraw groundwater. But anything that's greater, that withdraws water from a well that pumps greater than 35 gallons per minute, there's a requirement for a withdrawal authority. Also provisions regarding augmentation and, once again, underground storage and recovery. And inside the AMAs, the requirement is for an assured water supply, not adequate. So under the assured water supply requirements, new developments cannot be developed unless they can show a 100-year assured supply for that development. So once again, for the 3rd time, you get to see the map of the Northwest Basins Planning Area. You're going to draw it in your sleep tonight. But the key thing about this is that the Northwest Basins does not have any basins that are either INAs, and it is not within an AMA. So there are no additional groundwater requirements or management, no AMA or INA. I mention that because the two other planning areas that DWR is currently working with, the West Basins INA, or the West Basins Planning Area, has the Harquahela INA within it. We are also working in the Cochise Planning Area, and there is the Douglas INA within that area. So ADWR's regulatory authority is limited outside of an AMA to those statewide provisions that we discussed. Additionally, as Tom mentioned, is that there's no reporting requirements required outside of the community water systems reporting requirement in the Northwest Basin Planning Area. And so that's part of the goal, is us working with you to refine and better understand what the demands actually are within the planning area. So the current status, once again, the only limitation on groundwater use outside of an AMA or an INA is that it must be, obviously we talked about the well drilling requirements, and it must be put to beneficial use, and the well must be registered. And we did also note on here that there is no ownership of groundwater within the state of Arizona. So there's no right of ownership of groundwater prior to its capture and withdrawal from the common supply. So future options within the planning area. Currently, AMAs and INAs are the only two management tools currently available in statute. But as we're having discussions in the other planning areas, and I anticipate similar discussions might take place in this planning area, is, well, we don't necessarily want an AMA or an INA, but we think that we need additional groundwater regulation. What is that going to look like? And so that's the process that's we're moving into having those discussions in the other planning areas. So the second bullet is, could those existing tools be part of a consensus-based solution set? Could it be something regulatory that doesn't look exactly like those? As Tom said, the solutions that are developed in meeting with the other two planning areas, we're seeing commonalities, but we're also seeing some lack of similarity. But I think that the idea is that there will possibly be enough commonalities that will come out of the planning area process that something that might work a little bit for everyone might be what we kind of move to. And then the anticipation is something like that would possibly be brought to that groundwater, or the Governor's Water Augmentation Council that I talked to, for vetting at that level. And then possibly, as in this last bullet, is it something that could perhaps might need to be passed legislatively. And that was all I had, except there might be additional information. So once again, the slides again, we're throwing a lot of information at you. All of the slide presentations, just to repeat again, will be available on our webpage in a couple of days. I did want to call out, I don't have a pointer, but it's at the very bottom. Our general webpage is www.azwater.gov. You can go into that, look for the water initiative links. You'll move into the planning process. We're being largely driven in this process web-based, so everything ultimately gets posted on the web and you can find it there. Or once again, don't hesitate to contact staff. Once again, John Riggins is the lead for this area. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. So we have about an hour and 6 minutes of scheduled time left. I'll make one last call to anybody that would like a blue card to be a public speaker. I'll also mention that State Representative Regina Cobb has also joined us at some point during the proceeding. Thank you. So we have 16 cards. If we give people up to 5 minutes, given our experience that not everyone will use 5 minutes, we probably will stay relatively close to the schedule. I see one more card coming. I think we can still work with about that amount of time. Michelle Moreno in the salmon-colored outfit will be kind of our timekeeper as we get close to the end of that 5 minutes for each person. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have enough time to get into a question and answer mode here with the department. We'll respond to your questions in writing, make those responses available, again, as Jerry pointed out, and is still up, I think, on the screen at the department's website at www.azwater.gov. So I'm going to turn it over to Lynn Smith, our Deputy Director, and she will run us through the public comment process.
Thank you. I have the comment cards from everyone who's turned them in, and I'm going to call you in the order that you turned in your cards. And I'll let you know two people so that you know who you'll be after. So our first speaker is going to be Denise Ben-Susan, and our second speaker, I should go ahead now and apologize for all the names I'm going to mispronounce, so please bear with me. Our second speaker is Adria Bluheil. So our first speaker is Denise Ben-Susan.
Hi, can you hear me okay? It's really glad to see all of you here. It's very nice of you to come. The problem is, we have sat through I don't know how many of these sessions, and you all have been very informative, so this is not an insult to you directly. But for 20 years, we already have known that our water systems are in depletion. You all know that as well. It's all on record at ADWR. Our local leaders all are also informed of that, as we citizens have made sure they were informed of that. We have proven in court through Chris Mays and the ACC judge that the Wallapai Aquifer is not recharging. Our water's just simply disappearing. So here I am. I really don't have much else to say because we all know what's going on. I showed Jerry our trunks full of data that we've had since the mid-90s. That we could have brought in and showed you all, but you have all that. The bottom line is that ADWR is going to have to come into our community and create an emergency and an immediate active management area. The INA is not enough. The wells have been sunk too fast, too many, especially in the Wallapai Aquifer. This is just not going to correct the problem. We as citizens do know that we can collect signatures and we will put them on the ballot, and that is what we will have to do. But if we wait 2 to 4 years even to accomplish this, it's going to be too late. Right now, it's too late. We're depleting. No one is doing anything about it. Our leaders have had plenty of time to do something about this. They didn't do it, they're not doing it, they're not going to do it, and we need you guys to step in and create an AMA on an emergency basis, and I would ask that you would do that for Mojave County. Do you have any questions for me? Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Adria Bluheil, and after will be Sarah Tabert. If you could please pronounce your names correctly and any affiliations for groups that you represent, would appreciate it.
You did a wonderful job. Adria Bluheil is right. I agree that from seeing your information, I think we need to have an AMA or be an INA also. My biggest concern right now, besides the fact that we're running out of water, but specifically, I'm concerned about the possible continued influx of growers from other states, the amount of water their crops may need, and the way in which they choose to water them. Because of Kingman's dependence on a limited source of water, I think there should be some regulation regarding responsible choice and quantity of crop, as well as watering methods. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sarah Tabert, and afterwards, Holly Irwin.
Hi, my name is Siri Tabbert. I live in Kingman. Thank you again for the presentation. Something that I really need more information about is understanding how groundwater recharge occurs. And I'm also interested in new technologies that would augment that sort of recharge. Hopefully they could be applied to agricultural uses of groundwater, because I know we all like to eat. I shop at a store where they advertise Arizona-grown produce, and, you know, basically we're all drawing down somebody's aquifer. So I just hope that we don't put limits on agriculture, especially those that directly benefit our community economically. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Holly Irwin, and then Robert Fennick.
Good evening. My name is Holly Irwin, and I'm here representing La Paz County. I'm one of their Board of Supervisors who represents District 3. You have all been down to La Paz County, and you've held 2 meetings in our area, down in the Winden area. And I'm just here for the record to state that one of the issues that we're having, as you know, but maybe the people in the audience do not know, is, first of all, I want to address the fact that I'm supportive of farming and irrigation. I believe that it's a big part of our economic development in our communities. The problem that La Paz has is we have 3 basins that are unrestricted. We do have companies that are coming in, whether it be from California or from overseas, that are here extracting our natural resource. And I don't understand why it is not being referred to as a natural resource and isn't being protected more aggressively. I'm concerned for the people that I represent in my district. I have residents that are currently having their wells dry up. They are having to dig deeper, and these are people that have been here for generations. Some that have came to retire here, and come in 5 years, their water has dropped 59 feet to where they're having to put in wells, go deeper with their wells. I'm concerned. We definitely need to address this issue. It's not just here in Mojave, but also in La Paz, as you know. And I'm glad that we do have our representatives here, because Representative Sonny Borelli has been working actively with me on this. And I think some legislation needs to be put into place so we protect our natural resource, because once the water's gone, it's gone. It will not come back. And then we won't have any economic development anywhere. And that's what I'm here to protect. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Robert Fennick, and then Ken Works.
My name is Robert Fenwick. I live out on Long Mountain. Now, where Hidden Meadows is at, where they're farming at. I had some comments for our Board of Supervisors that were supposed to be here, but I don't see any of them, so I'm going to kind of go off course and do some other stuff. We have a lot more water going out of the ground, sir, than 16,000 acre feet. Jim Rhodes, Kingman Farms, has said he wants to put 20,000 acres under cultivation in alfalfa, most water-intensive crop there is in the country. 5 acre feet a year to grow 1 acre of alfalfa. 20,000 acres times 5, 100,000 feet of water. A number of months ago, the man from Red Lake Farms gave his presentation to the Board of Supervisors, and he made his statement that they were going to use 70,000 acre feet of water a month. That makes 170,000, far cry from 16,000. Something needs to be done. This problem really belongs to our Board of Supervisors. And to my knowledge, the 5 people on the Board of Supervisors were elected to solve our problems. 170,000 acre feet of water is a problem. And it's time for some action, because we have talked this to death. Now, I know we're not in an AMA, and that's what the whole thing stipulates. So I would have to think that if the governor's got a task force together, that it's time for the task force to come up with a solution to our problems. The Board of Supervisors doesn't seem to want to do it, and you people are up here now, so I'm asking you, we need some help. Don't know what it is, but somebody needs to do something. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming up here.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ken Works, and then Fred Anderson.
Good afternoon. I'm here kind of on behalf of Property Owners Association south of Yucca. There's about 3,000 parcels down there, 40-acre parcels, a few 80-acre parcels mixed in there, and some sprinkling of square miles here and there of state trust land. And the reason we haven't had any real water problems down there is because wells are just too expensive to go out and drill, and it's too iffy if you're going to hit water when you drill one. There's the guy that sold me my property, the real estate agent. He's got a $26,000 dry hole up in the north end of Golden Valley. One of my neighbors has a 900-foot dry hole. So he had a lot of money, so he drilled another one, and he got about 7 feet or 7 gallon a minute well for another 20 grand or so to drill the well. But the well in Yucca is where we get most of our water. We have it hauled in there from Yucca. I checked out the USGS report on that well, and it says that well's getting more water in it every year. It gets the level keeps rising, and I think using some wells actually helps them. I have a problem with some of these monitoring techniques where these wells just sit out there stagnant and no water's going into them, no water's coming out of them, and we're using that for a gauge. I think it's better to have a well that you've got water coming in and out of and developing, and use those types of wells for your monitoring techniques. It just seems to me like you get a lot more accurate measurements that way. I took a drive out a few days ago out to Planet Ranch. There's a windmill out there at the end of that Planet Ranch Road on the 13-mile mark. It's going constantly. When the wind's blowing, it's pumping water constantly into a concrete holding area, and then it's just going right back down into the ground and then coming out the well again. I think it's common sense that if you water at night, where I used to live, I watered a couple acres of alfalfa, and I watered at night. Once every 2 or 3 weeks was all I had to water it. I'd water it all night long with rainbirds. Neighbors would water in the daytime more often, and their alfalfa would still die. So I think that there's techniques that need to be used, and I think it needs to be imposed in a lot of situations. That's what they're doing in Israel. They've put plastic on the ground using drip irrigation. There's an orchard down near where I live that's about 20 acres in size, and he's using drip irrigation on his trees. It seems to be working okay for him. But I think that there needs to be some impositions on the times that the water's being used. If it's used at night, if you're watering at night, it goes back into the aquifer and helps to recharge the aquifer. So I think that we need to make some gains in that area, but thank you for listening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Fred Anderson, followed by Dale Enlow.
Hi, I'm Fred Anderson. I have a question about salinity. As the water level goes down in these various wells, are we going to have usable water? I noticed there's a comment in some of the material about treating water, for desalinization. Is this going to be a factor in our future? Do we even know if we're going to have a salinity problem? Has there been any sampling of water at any great depth? Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We'll dig up that information that we have on the salinity and put it online with the rest of the information pursuant to the comments and questions.
Our next speaker is Dale Enlow, followed by Amanda Kaufman.
Hi, my name is Dale Enlow. I'm a property owner and have an exempt well in the Spring Valley Ranch subdivision on the northeast slope of the Peacock Mountains. And first of all, I'd like to thank the director and all of his staff for being here and listening to us. My first concern in looking at the maps, it looks like even though my well is in the Wallapai Valley Aquifer, I'm not in the Northwest Basin Planning Area for some reason. The line seems to come down just to the west of us. So I'm not sure why that happened, why the entire aquifer was not in the planning area. And the other thing that I would like to say is my opinion is the lack of water is a statewide issue, and that the entire state should be managed to look toward the goal of zero net loss of water, and that any non-exempt well that's capable of greater than 35 gallons a minute should be monitored and measured all across the state. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one request to help us answer your question about where your well is in relation to the planning area. If you have the well registration number, that would be helpful if you could get that to us, and we could help pinpoint the location and get a better answer.
Yes,
to that question.
I have the well registration number, and I also submitted a written sheet, so it
Thank
should
you.
be on there.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Amanda Kaufman, followed by Dr. O. Riggs.
Good evening, I'm Amanda Kaufman. I am representing myself, but I am an owner of Brown Drilling. My brother and I own it. We've been running it since 2007. We've been in Kingman since 1983. We've drilled a lot of wells in the area. And if I had to guess and pull a number out of the air, I'd say at least 90% of the wells that we actually drill here are for the people that live here. Domestic wells, less than 35 gallons a minute. In fact, probably most of them are less than 5 gallons a minute. Many of those wells are not in these defined aquifers per se. They're up in the hills. Like the one we drilled today was at the top of the Wallapai. We're at 6,300 feet, and we drilled right into bedrock, and we're looking for a crack or something that's letting it through. It's not going right into an aquifer. On that note, I'm a strong believer in the fact that each of us have the right to life, liberty, and our own individual pursuits of happiness. And I think as a property owners, right now, nobody is limited on what they can do with their property. But I have also seen how what people do with their property could affect us. In the case with the number of irrigation wells that have gone in the last 2 years since 2014, and the possibility that it could actually be having an effect on our aquifers. And I understand that we do not actually have firm numbers on what is happening recently. I am asking on behalf of myself and behalf of being a water well driller and watching people run out of wells or need a well drilled right now, even the stock wells for the rancher, I would like to not see us have an AMA established here, but we do have those tools of the AMA and the IMA, and I don't think everybody here has the common knowledge of what the difference is between an AMA and an IMA, but the IMA would focus specifically on the irrigation wells, which is what I'm hearing tonight is the main concern, and it may be that we go down that route initially to look at it, but I would like to see us stay away from the AMA because it would affect all of us. And I think having just that basic domestic well where you pull a permit and you have every right to pull the water out on your own private property for your own private use. And with that, yes, you can irrigate up to 2 acres. That's part of that permit. I would like to see those rights not be infringed upon at this time. That's all I have.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Francis Riggs, followed by Richard Greville.
Hello. I have three things to say. I think it should be obvious that the needs of the people... Oh, sorry. Three things to say. Number one, it should be obvious that people's needs for water and also nature preservation that nobody mentioned should take priority over industries, including industrial agriculture. We don't want another Sahara here or another Dust Bowl, what happened in the 30s in this country. So agricultural use should be limited to crops grown to sell locally, maybe at farmers markets, not to be shipped out somewhere where we never see even an economic benefit. And another thing is, in the other industries, maybe it's time for them to go away. I'm not afraid to say that. And number three is we really need to change the law that allows development to continue when there's an adequate water supply. That should not go on. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Richard Greville, followed by Alex Caballo.
Hello, I'm Francis Riggs, and I don't have a lot to add to what's been said already, except that I really agree with Dr. Olga. We need to consider not just economic problems, but also ongoing effects that may affect us for hundreds of years into the future. This kind of depletion of water without adequate recharge can affect our whole ecosystem in this delicate area of a semi-arid and maybe becoming more arid areas. And it's something we really have not addressed maybe adequately until now. And I really appreciate the fact that you all are looking into these problems and try to keep this in mind also when you're looking at it. Economics is important, sure, but that's the short run. I mean, we need to take a little bit longer look too. And that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you, Mr. Riggs. Next is Richard Greville. We had, I think, a person who we didn't actually have the card, so we got a little out of order. I apologize. So if we could have is it Greville? Mr. Greville next, and then Mr. Caballo after that. Thank you.
When I first went down Stockton Hill Road and discovered that they were actually trying to farm out there by drilling 20-inch wells in great quantity, I was astounded. That's the water for the whole area. These guys are making money off of this, shipping our water to another country. I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, I have heard that some of it goes to China and some of it goes to Saudi Arabia. I don't know what the truth is, but it isn't going here. If we're going to take water out of the ground, we should grow something we can eat here in the Kingman area. I would like to see some action. I'd like to see Governor Ducey issue an executive order to stop these guys in their tracks while we figure out what to do next. This is just ridiculous. This water is going to be gone, and Kingman will be a little gas stop on 40. It won't be the community that it is now, and the areas around it are going to suffer the same way. Like I said, I'm totally astounded it was allowed. There was no provision to just tell these people, no, you can't do that. You're not going to steal our water for your profit. I guess that's all I've got to say, but I'd like to see more than meetings. I'd like to see some action. It kind of makes me wonder if there was some money changed hands farther up. It really makes you wonder, why was it allowed?
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alex Caballo, followed by Chris Ballard.
Good afternoon. My name is Alex Cabillo, enrolled tribal member of the Wallapai Tribe, concerned citizen. I'd first like to say is that areas that we need to look at we haven't heard much of at all is water budgets of the mining operations throughout the state. There's an extreme amount of water that's being used in mining that's not even being accounted for. We talk about irrigation for beneficial uses. Well, we're in the desert, and all our history of the agriculture has been all wrong in the state. Maybe it's time to stop. Let's take a real serious look at where we're at. We see the active management of the AMAs and the INAs. Those are created after the resources are already devastated and you have more people depending on what little is there. We need to have more of a proactive approach to the management of water in the state. We're looking at, there's a mindset of trying to pull industry, economic growth and development here. I think we ought to be looking at what is the carrying capacity of the natural resources we have here, and that is the extent of our growth and development. There's aquifer protection permit laws that are out there that I think are sort of not quite right. I'll give you an example. The Baghdad mine in Baghdad has a copper mine. I was worried about the groundwater in the Big Sandy Aquifer. And a lot of that water goes to the mine. And I've been assured that Baghdad mine they understand the protection of the groundwater, and they have aquifer protection permits on discharges of their waters. But there is no protection on the Big Sandy Aquifer in which they're pulling all this water from, processing their metals. So I think that needs to be looked at. If you're going to do an aquifer protection permit, make sure you do an aquifer protection permit that protects the aquifer that's subject to being depleted. I just want to emphasize again that they emphasize the irrigation as a beneficial use. Okay, well then, I think the consumptive use is also a necessary beneficial use for potability in drinking water, and we still see water quality concerns in Vala Vista, and I've got granddaughters there. I think that needs to be fixed. And, I am really reluctant to control and oversight and regulations, but something is needed in the statewide that's protective of our personal rights and our personal consumptive use, and let's take a look at the health and well-being of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Chris Ballard, and then Brad Lines.
You were seeing.
I'm Chris Ballard. I am with the Mojave County Department of Development Services, and I first want to thank ADWR for coming here and listening to everything we have to say, everything our residents have to say concerning this very important topic. Approximately 10 years ago, the U.S. Geological Survey, Department of Water Resources, and Mojave County joined forces to complete a number of studies in the Detrital Basin, the Wallapai Basin, and the Sacramento Basin. As a part of these studies, water budgets were published for each basin. In the Wallapai Basin, those water budgets noted that 9,800 acre-feet per year were removed from that basin, and that included usage that was associated with the city of Kingman. For the Sacramento Valley Basin, approximately 5,500 acre-feet per year were removed from that basin or withdrawn from that basin. And these levels resulted in a limited reduction in storage in each basin. Since that time, or since those studies or the base data for those studies was acquired, there have been substantial changes in Mojave County's land use and as a result, our water usage. And I do want to acknowledge and thank ADWR for bringing up the point that they are looking at the fact that the data no longer reflect what's going on in Mojave County, and will be hopefully revising that. At the present time, there are large numbers of acreage or large acreages of land in agricultural production in the Wallapai Basin, with many more acres scheduled for conversion. In the Sacramento Valley Basin, there is also a sizable area in agricultural production, again with expansions planned. We ask that as part of their review, ADWR developed revised water budgets for both the Wallapai and the Sacramento Basin that take into account the current acreage in production, in agricultural production, as well as that acreage that is scheduled for conversion in the near future. Again, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brad Lines, and then Rodney D., and I'm sorry, I don't have a guess at the last name, but hopefully you'll know who you are.
This is an emergency, as you've heard it all. There's red flags all over this, you know, Saudi Arabia, China buying up land all over this country. It's not just here, it's all over the place, and they've already depleted a lot of their groundwater. It's factual. Saudi Arabia tried to grow wheat and had a lot of groundwater. They've used it up, and they're saving what they have left for themselves, for their people. And now they're going to come over and try and get ours. And that's just the way it is. And they are drilling day and night, and with the biggest well casings, the biggest pumps, everything, before we get an IMA or an AMA in place. So it's all grandfathered in because it's already been done. You know, how are you going to reverse that? It's got to be done soon. And, you know, I got to give some credit here for, I hate to say it, but Ducey says no to relaxed water rules. I don't know if anybody saw this in the paper. And I just want to read little bits of it. And it makes me leery of the Arizona Department of Water Resources, because down in their bills were put into the Senate trying to make it relaxed laws to not have the 100-year proof of that for developments on, this is in agriculture, but for developments in housing. And so here's, and then the U.S. Bureau of Land Management sued the Arizona Department of Water Resources for signing off on this development down in Sierra Vista. And the federal agency says the developer intended to use the groundwater that is linked to a federally protected conservation area along the San Pedro River. So the Bureau of Land Management sued ADWR. Well, now Maricopa Superior Court ruled against the Department of Water Resources, but the agency is going to appeal that. They want that development, that billionaire, David H. Murdoch, to have that development down in Sierra Vista, even though the BLM is saying, let's don't do that. So I don't know how many more people got to speak, but here's another deal here too, and this is good to look up on the internet, you know, groundwater depletion. That you can't believe what you read on that deal. This is worldwide. The American Geophysical Union, that's a union of scientists, field people that know stuff. And here's an abstract that they wrote, and it's on the internet, but they've got a lot more to say. It's incredible. And they came up with this thing from NASA Gravity Recovery and Climate Experiment Mission, and it's called GRACE. And first thing they say here is on their abstract is stream flow of the Colorado River Basin is the most over-allocated in the world. Okay, but now And then, then the recovery experiment mission found that during that period of sustained drought, which we're in, groundwater accounted for 50.1 kilograms times 3, whatever, of the total 64 of freshwater loss. The rapid rate of depletion of groundwater storage far exceeded the rate of depletion of Lake Powell and Lake Mead. The results indicate that the groundwater may comprise a far greater fraction of the basin water use than previously recognized, in particular during drought, and that is its disappearance may threaten the long-term ability to meet future, which is what ADWR is all about, the future of water allocations in the 7 basin states. There's other good stuff, you know. I mean, it's just so obvious. Go on out there and see what they're doing out there on Red Lake and stuff. On a windy day, on a hot, windy day, they've got these little sprinklers. They said they were going to use drip irrigation to begin with. Well, they said it was too labor intensive, so they just did away with that and they put in their sprinklers. It was more convenient. Get the water out there as fast as you can. Get this done before somebody stops us. And they got these little sprinklers that are just mystifying the water above the crops. And it is gone, man. It is just... Good luck.
Thank you. Next is Rodney. I'll let you say your last name if you would, sir. And then Kevin Davidson.
My name is Rodney Weintraut. We just brought a place out there last year, and what I know today, we would not have brought that place because Robert over here hit the nail on the head, and I have a tendency to meander around to see what's going on just out of curiosity, you know, who's playing with what. And there's bar ditches over there with, they run water in them. There's no crops, no nothing. It's just a bar ditch. It's about knee deep in water. It's just not an overnight thing. And I mean, it's got moss growing on the bottom of it, on the sides of it, and it's well, a couple inches thick. So it's been running for a long spell. And then there's, I accidentally stumbled into one of the head honchos over there, you know, and we just got bullshitting around there. And he kind of said that, you know, I kind of asked him about the water level and, you know, what they're doing and all that. And he says they're good for a couple more years and then they're going to have to move out of there because they'll have depleted the water table. And we'll be the first ones to go because I live over there on, well, the north end of Long Mountain, and I'm at basically the last house on the right. And, you know, that kind of really puts a kink in it for me. Because I put everything I've got into this place, to have somebody come along from another country and wipe their ass with me. It really has a tendency to piss me off. And I don't know who they brought out, but I got one question I would like to have an answer to. When my well goes dry, who do I see about it? Which one of you people do I sue? If I don't win in the courtroom, I will win in the parking lot. Good luck on it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kevin Davidson, and then Jean Kenta.
Yes, Kevin Davidson, representing the Wallapai Tribe as their planning director. The Wallapai Tribe has about a 1 million acre land base, covers areas in Wallapai Valley, Peach Springs, and the Big Sandy Valley. I'd like to know if the tribe is available to be a member of the Augmentation Council that ADWR proposes. I hope the answer is yes. Also like to invite the ADWR to enter into direct government-to-government relations with the Wallapai Tribe, given that we are a sovereign nation. Another question is, it might be good for ADWR to propose a series of demand-side management tools for cities and counties to use, because I know I used to work for the county, and they feel compelled to rezone land. And if you have a question about water adequacy, That should be clearly stated by ADWR that you are not compelled to change your plan amendments or rezone land to encourage more growth. So that's a demand side, somewhat radical tool for the state to embrace that. And also maybe a concept about peak water, for the peak oil, peak gas and the like. You probably can find more water, but at 1,400 meters or deeper, the question about pumping that water up and desalination, the cost of that. I'd hate to see our cities become stranded because they cannot afford to pay for the water bills. Kingman is not really a rich town, and personally I'm paying about $75 a month on my water bill. Most of it is sewer, but I can see as the water increases in value, you could easily have a $200 a month water bill for an average house in Kingman if you're pumping from, say, 2,000 meters down. So just questions to think about. And again, I'd like to invite you out to meet with the Tribal Council and a direct government-to-government negotiation and relationship.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jean Kenta.
That's Jeannie Kench.
Jean Kench, thank you.
Thank you.
Followed by Nicole Cohen.
Thank you very much for being here. Number one, I really appreciate it. A little history of me. I'm a watershed steward, and I was a member of the Northwest Watershed Council, as well as appointed to the local drought impact group that we had here. We were the longest running impact group, LGIG group in the state. So I am very familiar with our concerns here in Mojave County. I do not want an AMA due to too many regulations. I think it's too late for an INA. You say that you are here to move forward. I'm hoping that you move forward quickly because what I see that you're doing, which is a wonderful thing, is going to take years and years, and we need to do something now. Our well owners need to be protected now, and that's our problem. We have no water in perpetuity anymore at the county level, and we have no protections at all. How many years will this project take for you is my question, and is there something else we can possibly look at as possibly maybe water conservative crops or agricultural well limits and the size of their wells? There's got to be something, and I'm asking you for the ADWR, because I do understand what your limitations are, is to talk to our legislator and start some laws now, not in 5 years when you're done with this other project. The last project took 5 years. Here's another project that takes 5 years, and we really need something done a lot sooner than another 5 years. So thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, we will be replying to questions in writing and posting them on our website. And our next speaker is Nicole Cohen.
Hi, I don't really have much to say because this is a new issue for me. I will say that it's exhausting trying to keep up with our government and all the regulation and laws that we have to live by. But the point I wanted to make was the one thing that we need to sustain life is the only thing that isn't regulated. I find that just astonishing. And I would like that to be taken to the governor. I also wanted to say that I don't think that statute is the way to go. This is a national security issue, as far as I'm concerned, and this should be taken seriously and maybe included in a constitutional amendment, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jennifer Jones, followed by Representative Regina Cobb.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Jones. I'm a candidate for the Arizona House of Representatives. I was at the La Paz County meeting, so I'm very much aware of the situation down there with the subsidence in the Renegris Plain, and that it has gotten so bad down there that people's wellheads are sticking up above the ground because the ground is collapsing over the aquifer. And I know that La Paz is one of the highest priorities in the state under the governor's plan, but I would urge ADWR to put Mojave County right behind it because it hasn't reached that point yet, but it's headed in that direction. part of the problem that we have is that you only have 2 tools, and you're 20 years too late, and it's going to take time. I agree with Amanda Kaufman that a full AMA is probably too much regulation, because I don't particularly trust a government that hasn't gotten the job done yet to over-regulate things. My idea of agriculture is that the guy on a quarter-acre lot can grow his own produce in his own yard because he can drill his own well and he can have his own water. Because as the people in La Paz County are finding out, when you're out of water, your property's worth nothing. And nobody, as the gentleman before me pointed out, is really going to compensate for the loss of your property value. And taking it out in the parking lot isn't going to fix anything, although it might make you feel a little bit better. It might be too late for an INA, but I think that should be an immediate priority. I think that an AMA is probably too much, and that there should be a legislative fix. During the campaign debates, I've repeatedly heard Representative Borelli say this issue is too complicated and has too many lawyers involved to really deal with, and he doesn't have much of a plan for that. But one thing that nobody has addressed is a bigger problem even than alfalfa farming, and that's the fact that all of our municipalities in this district are landlocked by the Bureau of Land Management. The BLM gave permission to a company called Solar Reserve to come in and put a giant steam turbine-driven solar plant in La Paz County that would ship the power to California, because we've used up all of our alternative credits. Right now, the BLM can allow anyone they want that they lease land to stick a straw in our aquifers. And I would like to know how ADWR is going to address that use of our water, because they have the potential to draw even more water without what seems like any control, because, oh, we're the feds and we manage that land. But they don't own it. It's our land, it's the people's land, and this is the most important resource that we have. So I would like to see you develop new tools. I think that an INA is imperative. I think perhaps maybe whoever does get elected in this legislative session coming up should look at creating some new tools for you legislatively. I think that as far as commercial scale agriculture goes, I'm not against growing food, but I am against things that do ship our water out with really no benefit coming back to the county. I think that zoning does have something to do with it, and I'm very, very much concerned about the expansion plan for agriculture that was clearly not anticipated in the original studies. And may I just add that whoever did that study and didn't anticipate agriculture, I hope that guy lost his job. We have to plan for the crisis that we have today, and then plan for the crisis that we have looming on the horizon. Right now, the crisis that we have is massive agricultural use of large wells pumping large volumes. I want to protect the little guy, the landowner, so that he can feed himself. If the agriculture here is not going to feed the people of this district, then I want to make sure that those people have the water and the availability and the freedom to use the water on their land to feed themselves. And if you live in Kingman or Bullhead, I just want to assure you that Quartzsite has the availability to sell their Colorado River allotment, so there may be some things to help people in the incorporated municipalities, but I'm not sure that will help people in the unincorporated areas. But it's imperative that we do something for Mojave County now. I don't know where you have them ranked behind La Paz, but I absolutely beg you to bump them up in your list of priorities and make this a high priority for ADWR. Put them right behind La Paz, and let's get this done, and let's not let it take 5 or 10 years. Thank you.
Let me just make one comment about that. This area is of equal priority to La Paz and Cochise County, as I think Jerry described, hopefully in her presentation. And one of the reasons it is that the Mojave County Board of Supervisors authorized their county manager to make a request to DWR to make it of equal priority and to have us begin working on this area. As you can imagine, there were lots of areas of the state that wanted to be prioritized in this first go-around in this planning area process.
Representative Cobb.
Good evening. Thank you so much for all of you coming in. I'm Representative Cobb, and over the last 2 years, I've worked with Jackie, and we've had several meetings with ADWR on several issues, especially with this issue and the Truxton issue. So I wanted to just assure the audience that this is something that has been on our top of priority. This is not just an issue in Mojave County, La Paz County, but just as you mentioned, it is Cochise County too, that they're also having the same issues. And I actually thought that we had legislation that we were going to be able to work through this year that Representative Stevens originally announced. And I thought that that was going to kind of work its way through, but with all legislation, sometimes you have unintended consequences, and that's what happened with his legislation. It got stalled out. So I hoped we can be working on this through this next year. After listening to the audience and some of the questions that they had, it's also some of the questions that I've been having over the last couple of years. Arizona, as we know, has increased, and I'm on the Ag, Water, and Land, so I hear these issues all the time. The Colorado River is another issue that we're having, and with Lake Mead and Lake Powell, and how much water is coming down through there. And just so that the audience knows, Arizona is one of the best conservation areas that one of the best conservation states in the United States. We have increased in population, but we haven't increased our water use out of the Colorado River since 1950. So we have been able to actually reduce the amount of waters that we have. Some issues, though, that we have with this, we're talking about the groundwater and the areas that Representative Borelli and I have worked with all of you on in the past couple of years, and hopefully we can move through legislation. And some of the things that we want to address is how long does it take between the time that someone gives a notice of intent and when they can actually drill? I would like to know those questions, needing to conform to is it the same as what someone is needing to conform to a subdivision? I know that these wells that are put out here are obviously a man that was working on subdivisions, and now he's working on hay. So I don't know when that switch may go the other direction, but it may. So those are concerns of mine. Do we have restrictions on selling on our foreign investors? Do we have any restrictions in those areas? And I think that's something that we need to also look at. I've heard the audience talk about AMA and IMAs on both sides, and I would like it on either the website, or if you guys can address that again today. But I would love to hear I wanted addressed to them what this would mean to the private domestic person that has a well, because the people that are considering an AMA and IMA, they don't know the restrictions on the domestic person, on the domestic well that you're using for our home. And I hope that we can delineate between those, because I'm not an AMA, IMA person. I want to have a third option legislation. I think that it needs to be done. I think it needs to be an emergency, and I hope that there's some way we could do some retroactive as far as maybe monitoring the wells that have already been in place, and that we can go back to that position. And if I'm in there again this next year, I hope I could work with you on this issue. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Louis Vega, and then our last speaker is Al Edso.
Hello, my name is Louis Vega. Thank you very much for coming. This is a very emotional topic, and a number of us that have lived in the county for some time have been dealing with this for quite some time. It's easy to try to identify scapegoats and put all the blame in certain areas, but the problem is complex, and really we are all part of the problem. If you do the math and calculate the amount of water, we're going to run out of water, whether there are agriculture fields or not. Just people living in this area are going to deplete the water. So unless we're ready to kick everybody out, we have to look at reasonable options using the tools at hand, the AMA, the INA, and also possibly we need to start thinking outside the box and get some other tools. It is a complex problem, and the best way to address it is to become educated. Thank you for your website and all the tools that are there. I would highly recommend that anyone that is interested in this to become educated in the water problem. It's not as easy as just throwing rocks at somebody. Thank you for coming here.
Thank you. And sir, if you wouldn't mind giving your name so I don't mispronounce it.
Hi, my name is Alan Edson. Thank you for coming and thank you for hearing me. I live out on Cali Glen at the north end of Long Mountain along with Rodney. And from what I've seen here today, it's my opinion that you people have divided our state up into so many little areas that it's totally impossible to maintain any type of structure or anything else. All you've done is manage to complicate the matters. I see we're talking about tools. Well, we have a whole bunch of tools that they've mentioned up here on the screens that nobody uses. For instance, we're not supposed to take our water and sell it. Fine, we'll just turn it into grass and sell that too. It just doesn't make any sense. Also, we have a problem. Everybody's aware of it. We've talked about it. It's gone over and over and over. But by golly, we just keep issuing them wells, don't we? Issuing them well permits and just letting everybody in the Saudi Arabias and everybody else in the whole damn world come down here and steal our water when our local citizens can go hungry and can go thirsty. You people have absolutely no common sense. You just frickin' talk and don't do anything. I'm glad I'm the last speaker because then everybody can hear how absolutely disappointed I am with you whole bunch of idiots. Somebody's getting paid off. Our water's going away. My property is being turned into an absolute piece of junk. Everything that I've worked for is over with, and I thank you all very, very much. Good night.
I want to thank everyone for their comments and also remind you, if you wanted to submit comments in writing and didn't get a chance, there are forms in the back that you can either give to us today or mail in, whichever is more convenient for you. Now I'll turn it back over to Director Bushotsky.
Thanks, Lynn. Again, I want to thank everyone for attending and for their comments. I need at this point in time to introduce the staff person who has been assigned by ADWR to be the coordinator for this planning area, John Riggins. Again, you can all reach him either by telephone at 602-771-4782. Again, that's 602-771-4782, or by email at jrriggins, so jrriggins at azwater.gov. So I hope that the information we provided to you today is helpful. We will continue to be out here to meet with you, to try to develop the tools that we've heard many of you suggest need to be developed, to try to get the support among the community that those tools can be equitable and meet enough folks' needs in a way that those tools that need legislative approval potentially can actually make it through the legislature and actually do some good and not create tools that might not actually solve the problems that are presented in these areas. So again, with that, I think we're pretty well on schedule, and I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.